Hello.
A person.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry I'm late.
No worries. You're the only person here, so it's all you now. No pressure.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Hello, I am
Hello.
Squire Anya. Um, Today I am going to be talking about Fae and Fae adjacent individuals, species, lore. Um, just as an FYI about me, and the reason that I wanted to talk about this is that I am an Irish pagan. I study I study Irish paganism. I study Irish lore. I study the other crowd, as they are referred to in Ireland, the gentry, the good people, the good neighbors, the good folk, and so on and so on. In Ireland, you do not refer to the good neighbors as anything other than what they are not, uh, because you don't want to invoke them, um, which is something that I will talk about more. Anyways, I will be talking about kind of around the world, the spirits, the elves, the she. Um, they're called a lot of things, but I just want everyone to be aware that Ireland is my particular area of study, my spirituality, and my depth of knowledge. So the other things I'm talking about are things that I just kind of looked up briefly and don't know a lot about. And I strongly encourage everyone to do your own research about the lore, the cultures that you are going to be learning about. And um, let's say celebrating and not taking from, because we will be talking about appropriation and appreciation, um, and how to not appropriate other people's cultures as much as we can in the context of what we do here. So, getting started on what the Fae are. What even is Fae? So this is a list of all the listed types of Fae, Fae adjacent fairies, blah blah blah, that we have listed on our Geddon page right now, the Fae Geddon page. Um, they come mostly from Europe. Um, yeah, so this is I know things about some of these types of Fae and others. And I don't know about a lot of other ones. I've looked through all the available Geddon pages that we have. So if you have Geddon pages for any of these, well done. If you are one of these types of folk and don't have a Geddon page, make one or reach out to me and I'll help you make one, because I just really love rich lore. And the monsters are kicking our butts and having rich lore. So let's make it happen. Let's get up there on their level.
I think the only one I've never seen before is the Nukalave.
Yeah, the Knuckleavy comes from Scotland, which I think I put in here. No, I didn't. The Knuckleavy comes from Scotland. I had to look that up because I didn't know what it was, and now I don't remember. uh, but someone's a Knuckleavy, and I remember they had a page and it was cool. So check that out.
I'd never seen that one before. The
Mm-hmm.
rest I was kind of familiar with, but yeah, that one was like, I've never seen that word before.
There's actually, yeah, in Scotland and Ireland, there are a lot of individual types of she, and they are, yeah, there most of them are in Irish and Scottish, which is their respective languages. So, yeah, there's a whole thing. Um, the good folk, the elves, the fae, the she come from all over. I mean, all over the world. I didn't look into at all any Asian cultures, African cultures, any indigenous American cultures, North or South. Any, I didn't look into really anywhere besides Europe, and there's little bit. The jinn come from the Arabian Peninsula, so um, most of the lore that we understand and know of in Western culture comes from Europe because that's how Western cultures work. I guess they all pretty much come from Europe. Um, so the France is kind of the originator of the term Fae. Uh, yeah, I don't remember what I think it came from Fee FEE, which was like I talk about it in the next slide. But anyways, they come from France. Northern Europe is the elves almost exclusively, so no matter what type of spirit you are referring to in Northern Europe, it's usually comes from the elves. I know we talked at some point last year about including the elves in our Fae lore. I think that's going to have to kind of be up to the elves because uh, fantasy elves are not always the same thing as like Fae elves. So that will have to be a bigger conversation that if any of the elven folk wish to have with me or with other Fae folk, give us a shout. Um, in Ireland, it's the she, like I said when I started, the good neighbors, the good folk, the other crowd, the gentry. It is pronounced she, as well as in Scotland, it's also pronounced she. They have their own lore of and collection of folks. In Greece, from our list from the Gedden page, we have dryads, nymphs, and satyrs. And in Rome, of course, we have the satyr knockoff, the faun. Sorry, Yui. You're not a knockoff. I love you. Uh, England, Germany also have their own branch of Fae spirit folks. Um, yeah. So continental Europe and elsewhere, all of Europe, I suppose, just kind of has its own. Each area and culture has its own collection. And then I did a very small amount of looking into the Arabian Peninsula and the Jinn, which seem to kind of have the same um, body or similar body of lore and evolution, where the Jinn were kind of like the spirits of the land, and then when Islam kind of became a thing and took over, it became more of they were like the demons. Um, so yes, I don't take my word for that. Please do your own research if you're going to go there. I haven't done it. Um, if you want help, I will gladly help there. I just, yeah, I can't study the whole world.
It's all good.
So let's talk about the evolution of the Fae, which I kind of did already, but pre-Christian. This is kind of a general framework for the way that the spirits of whatever culture, the elves, the Jinn, the Fae, have evolved uh, into what we know them today in Western culture. So, um, pre-Christian, they were magical or enchanted beings, typically, very generally and broadly. In Old French, the term, which I like, as I mentioned before, was one of them at least was fee, FEE, probably pronounced Fae, were women skilled in magic, so really they were more witches. Uh, or may have also been fated, doomed, or accursed. Um, and then in early modern English, so this was kind of contemporary, it was Fae meant the realm of the Fae. So not only is Fae the people, but it can also be the realm of those people, which is usually uh, underground or like some ethereal in between, kind of vague and varies from culture to culture. Or they may have also been pagan deities, as in the case of Ireland. Not all the She were deities, um, but most, if not all, of the deities became She, if that makes sense. In the oh, which cycle of lore was it? Anyways, the Tuatha Danann, who are the primary people who were driven underground into the Shees, the fairy mounds, um, are most of the deities in pagan Ireland. So, yes, oftentimes the Fae are pagan deities. Pagan deities are not always Fae. Then Christianity came along, and a lot of times had to assimilate the lore from the cultures that they were trying to colonize, because that's part of colonization is we're going to take your stuff and make it ours, so that you have to do our thing now. So the Fae, the other crowd, often became the fallen angels or the demons in Christian lore. And then when theater came along, well, not came along because theater was always there, but especially during the Shakespearean era of theater, they had to find a way to distinguish the fairies in their stories. So they became people with wings, sometimes twee, tiny people with wings. Um, and then because of, the Renaissance and all that stuff, this took off into art and became kind of the weird thing that we know today, where fairies are twee little people living under mushrooms with wings. Um, so understand that that is that uh, portrayal of the fairies comes from an appropriative place of the pagan deities usually, or some form of pagan um, folk being distilled down into these twee little things with wings living under mushrooms. If that makes sense through that evolution. Does that make sense? I hope. Um, so, are the Fae history or are they present? Yes, is the answer.
Both.
Both. So, like I mentioned, I am an Irish pagan, and part of Irish paganism is understanding that the other crowd are a living, breathing uh, reality, or their own reality, but a reality. Um, and nope, I'm not going to swear, but don't f with the Fae, uh, because they will f you up. I actually, for this class, before I started, made a butter offering over on my altar, with the acknowledgement that I'm probably still going to reap some repercussions for doing this course at all. That's just kind of how it goes with them.
I don't want to be
So
talked
don't first rule of Fae Club, we don't talk about Fae Club. So they are history, they are lore, they are mythology, but they are also present, and there are Fae, she, other crowd, Jinn, spirits that are observed in many non-Christian cultures and even in Christian culture um, through today in Ireland. Um, Even the Catholics in Ireland are wildly superstitious. If you don't know, um, you do not f with the other crowd in Ireland. There are um, lots of instances of major roadworks being rerouted because they crossed um, sheep paths, or people having lots of bad luck with their houses, or yeah, you just don't mess with the other crowd in Ireland. I believe that's still also very much the case in Scotland, and I'm sure that it is in lots of other cultures. So they are both history and present. These beliefs are still very much alive. Ta-da! So that's what the Fae are. Any questions there, in brief summation? Awesome. So
no.
let's talk about appropriation and appreciation. Very briefly, this is a topic that I am still studying constantly and wildly as a privileged white cis woman. I have a lot of privilege in my life, um, and trying to understand these concepts is difficult, I think, for everyone. So this is a very, very brief rundown, and I'm just trying to get us in a place where that we can use our lore without appropriating from other cultures. As much as most of these cultures are white cultures, thing that we talk about a lot in my pagan groups is that um, paganism and pagan cultures were wildly colonized by Christianity, especially in Ireland. If you don't know the history of colonization in Ireland, uh, it's not as bloody as the genocide of Indigenous Americans or, slavery, but there is definitely a very large element of colonization and appropriation in Irish culture, especially when it comes to Irish Americans. Uh, we've really taken Irish culture and bastardized it to no end. So, talking about appropriation and appreciation so that we can use those things uh, appreciatively. Yeah. So, what is appreciation versus appropriation? In appreciation, we are learning about that culture, that lore, that piece of art, whatever it is from other cultures, and we are learning about it and understanding it. Whereas in appropriation, we may use it without understanding, such as I'm going to dress up as an indigenous person for Halloween because I think it looks cool, even though I'm white and I just want to do it for Instagram. That is appropriation. Whereas, if we are watching YouTube videos about indigenous American culture to learn about their culture and their heritage and their art, that would be appreciation. Uh, In appreciation, we present the original thing rather than an appropriation where we're cherry picking. So, an example of this for our Fae lore would be I am going to present, and this is hypothetical, I need to go back and redo my lore personally. Like I said, this is a process that I am working through for myself, and that's why I want to help other people work through it as well. So presenting the original lore rather than taking pieces of that lore and putting it and using it for what you want to use. So if I were to go to a lore night, a cool appreciative thing for me to do with Fey lore would be to take a piece of lore from Irish lore and present that lore in its totality as the original, rather than to say, oh, here's this piece of lore from this time period and this piece of lore from this time period and over here from this country in a different time period, and I'm going to mash them all together. Um, so, uh, focusing as much as we can on the original content and the original creators rather than taking the bits that we want and making them our own, if that makes sense. It's a very difficult thing to do, especially because the way that our lore is created right now, I think it's a lot easier for monsters not to be appropriative because everything is fantasy and made up and it's not based out of original things. Whereas in Fey lore, we are taking things that have already existed in our mundane world and turning them into fantasy, if that makes sense. Um, Another way to be appreciative rather than appropriative is to contribute to the source. So monetarily, sharing the stories like as I said before, presenting the originals. That's a good way to contribute, is to teach people about the source and about the original lore rather than using those things for personal gain or profit. So, me teaching this class is me trying to be appreciative of the cultures from which I am taking to present myself as Fae in this society. I may be moving away from that entirely. We'll see. I may be, honestly, all I have to do is change the word that I'm using for myself, and I could be a completely fantastical person that wouldn't have to be appropriative of other cultures. So, Yes, but we don't want to use other cultures for personal gain or profit, especially when those are colonized cultures. So, selling books about the lore that is not our lore. Um, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. The other Another piece of appreciation versus appropriation is using things with permission or without permission. Um, before I did this class, went to my pagan mentor, who I have access to right now, and I said, "What is the best way for me to approach this, um, so that we are not being appropriative in our lore?" And they told me that the best thing we can do is go back to the original lore and present the original lore as it is. So that was me asking for permission from a native source. Um, there are also instances of, more specifically, let's say sharing. Actually, no. Here we go. I'm a dancer. I dance Irish Shanos, which is a
Did you freeze, Anya? I think I lost Anya.
She's frozen on my end too. Anya, if you can hear us, I recommend leaving and coming back.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if you can hear us. I'll go message her on Discord. I don't know her Discord name. Oh.
She left.
Okay.
Hopefully she'll be back.
I assume she'll be back.
I don't know what her name on Discord is either. Oh, there. Oh, she's at the very bottom of the active list because of the accent above her name. So it goes below the letter Z because of that weird accent on her name.
That makes sense.
And she just signed off of Discord, so I think her whole computer crashed.
Okay. I'll go grab my phone so that if she messages me on Facebook, I know.
Did you pause the recording?
I don't know that I can pause it. I can stop it. Yeah, I can't pause.
Well, that's dumb.
If they do any editing before they put it on. She's messaging me. Accidentally turned off my computer.
Oh no.
Be right back.
All right. Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to use the bathroom real quick.
Sounds good.
All right, I have returned.
You beat our teacher, so.
Oh, let's see. This I need to look at.
Hi. I'm gonna keep presenting from my phone until I get my computer back up and running. This is why we make offerings to the other crowd, because they don't really like technology and they love to mess with it. Anyways, I was talking about appropriation versus appreciation, using with permission and using without permission in the dancing that I do. So the Shanos dance tradition is can be very specific and can be very broad. In Ireland, there are lots of different styles that come from different families and different areas in Ireland. So part of learning new steps in that dance is that if you are learning a new step from someone, it's important to ask them, is it okay for me to dance this step? And or do you want me to just know it and not dance it? Or if a lot of people will say it's okay if you dance this step as long as you attribute it to me and my family, because this is our step that we made and you have to dance it this way, otherwise that's appropriation. Yeah, so that's an example of using with permission and without permission. So if someone gave me a dance step and said, here's this step, and I said, oh, that's really cool, but what if I dance it this way and now it's my step? That would be appropriation, because I'm an American. I am not indigenous to that tradition. And yeah, sometimes it's okay for me to dance those steps if people say, yeah, go for it. And sometimes it is not. Oh, we're almost back up and running.
Yay.
What was, I think, oh no. So our next bit is going to be suggestions for not appropriating in Fae lore, and my presentation is almost here, so close. Oh, here we go. So excited. So sorry for the technical difficulties. This is what happens when you talk about the other crowd. Even if you make offerings, they're like, F you, you don't have the right to do this, and they're probably right, but I'm trying, and here we are. Poor computer. It's like, I have to open all of these things right now.
Yep.
Oh man, I really wish I could remember all of my presentation off the top of my head. Do things make sense so far?
Yeah.
Cool. What is your species, Alina?
I have changed a couple of times. I started out as a mere human, and then I was an elf for a little while until I didn't want to be an elf anymore. I think currently I think I decided to listen, or no, I was half elf. I was half elven. And then
oh boy, sorry.
Mute one of those.
I got it. I got this.
I was half elven for a little while, and I think I was toying with the idea of going dragon, but then I looked at the list of people who are currently dragons, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to be associated with them. So, so I think I settled on Angeli. Because then I could be either good or evil, depending on who I am influenced by.
Pre-Christian or post-Christian lore is that the other crowd are fallen angels, so you're in good company. Oh boy. Oh, my presentation's still loading, but man, we're so close.
So close. But yeah, that's where I currently stand. I'm Angeli, right I keep saying it wrong. Part angel right now.
Love it. I was half Fae for the beginning part of my Belegarth career, and then cool stuff happened, which made it so I am no longer half. I am all Fae. But like I said, that may be changing again, so that I can be less appropriative. Oh man, we can do a presentation. Look at you. You've got dots and words. All right.
You can load. I promise, Prezi, you can load.
What are my suggestions for appreciating and not appropriating? Honor the origins and the originals of the lore that you are using. So, yeah, talk about where do these things come from? What culture do they come from? What time do they come from? Tell the original stories, because they're really great. Research, do your research. I did a lot of it doesn't even have to be super in-depth research. Go to Wikipedia and say, hey, what is this thing? What do I need to know about this thing? And then if you feel like you need to dive in further, look at the resources that are offered on Wikipedia. Check them out. Go look at things more in depth. Always take Wikipedia with a grain of salt, of course, but I feel that Wikipedia has become maybe not a citable source in, like an academic paper, but it is a good place to start research and get a good broad idea of what you're looking at. And I feel like for our purposes here in Belegarth, Wikipedia is great. So check it out. Do your research, be open to feedback and change. So if someone tells you this is appropriative and you need to not do it this way, then say okay and take that on board and figure out how to fix it. And if that person who has told you that is willing to tell you how to fix it, listen to that feedback and change. Which is why, like I said, I may be changing my own lore so that I cannot be appropriating, because the person that I asked said you really need to focus on the original source lore, and not be changing things and so on and so forth. So,
Well, and another choice behind my species change was I wanted to have something a little bit more cohesive with my unit lore. And we don't really have any Fae or elves in Warhammer universe. So I wanted, and I liked what I read on the Belegarth wiki about Angeli and other research that I did with that.
Yeah, Belegarth Geddon is also one of my main resources for this particular adventure. It's great. Go to Geddon. Learn things. Oh man, losing my voice. Another thing you can do to appreciate is contribute money or volunteer your time to the source culture from which you are using lore. So money is easy. If you have money, it's a quick and easy way to say, I really appreciate you giving your time for me to understand this thing better. Here's some money. Or in Ireland, there are archives full of like folklore that school kids went and gathered and then have been collected by the folklore collection, the National Folklore Collection. And a lot of those things are untranslated or untranscribed. And so if the culture you are learning from has something like that, you can go and volunteer your time to transcribe things or to translate things if you have that ability. Super quick and easy way to contribute your time to that culture. Another really cool thing that I found while I was wandering through my research in this is on your Geddon page, you can use this exact lore in two swirly brackets. I don't know what they're called. And that will put this really cool thing on your page that looks like this. This page or section is lore. Its contents are for entertainment and flavor only. I think that's a really cool thing to include on your page, just as a disclaimer that, like, this is not, this is not necessarily mundane accurate. It's not historical necessarily. It's for flavor. I really liked that thing that I found while I was wandering around Geddon. So thanks for whoever put that in there. Also, if you need help with Geddon pages, come talk to me. I will gladly help. I know there are a lot of other people who are very happy to help with Geddon pages as well. I think maybe Galia, but I don't want to, volunteer her without her permission. So come talk to me or find other people who love Geddon and can help you out. So, questions about appropriation and appreciation?
No.
Like I said, I am by no means an expert in this topic. I am a privileged white girl. Yeah, so go learn what you can for yourself. Don't take all of my word for it because I am still very much learning about this topic, but I want to make people aware and make people start thinking about it. So let's talk about Belegarth lore. Fae, Belegarth lore. Ta-da! Here we are in the lore section. So one thing that we need to really think about collectively, or that I would really like us to think about collectively, is what we want our creation story to be. Do we want to have a collective Fae creation story? I think it's a really helpful jumping off point for individuals and for subspecies and that sort of thing. It's a thing that the monsters have, and it's kind of where they all jump off from. So the primary creation story in Belegarth is the casting of stones. If you're not familiar with it, basically each deity of the monster species took a rock and they threw it onto the planet, and wherever their rock landed was the place where that species would inhabit and get to be the dominant species in that space. So that's the very basic rundown of the casting of stones. If you want to read the whole story, it is on Geddon, and each species has their own kind of deity or their own version or their own dismissal of the story. I know the merfolk who I've included under the Fae category are like, our deity wasn't really into the casting of stones, so they're like, we'll just go in the water, and that's why the merfolk live in the water. One of the really cool stories that I heard at Lore Night on Thursday, the other night, go watch the video on Lore Night. It was super duper cool. Really well done, and I would love for other species outside of the monster species to start having those kinds of stories and presentations. Anyways, one of the really cool stories was Malashakad, who is the creation deity for the goblins. And basically, Malashakad was big and lazy and didn't care about the casting of stones, didn't show up for it. And wherever Malashakad peed, the goblins were. So that's how the goblins came to be. But Malashakad also, what was the bit about us, the other folks? Oh yes, so Malashakad was bored, and he wanted entertainment, and so he was trying to create a creature that would entertain him. So he had the mortal animals, but they were kind of boring. And then he created like totally immortal beings, but they were also kind of boring. And so he found something in between, and everywhere he peed became the goblins. And yes, so the all the other in between beings are kind of where the Fae and Fae adjacent folk fall into. So if the Malashakad story is something that we want to go with, which I think would be really cool, Malashakad was like, I want something to amuse me, and so became the less mortal beings, the Fae and others. It is notable that most of the goblins don't venerate Malashkad anymore, but the Cinderflesh tribe do. So something to consider, there is Malashkad, there is the casting of stones. If you want to, as a subspecies, have your own deity that your subspecies venerates, or who participated or did not participate in the casting of stones, or if you have a completely separate creation myth for your subspecies, that is awesome. Make sure you write it down or ask someone to help you write it down. Ask me. I will gladly help you create that lore because that's why I'm here and this is what I want to be doing. One other cool creation story I found was the Nadar. And this is where the dryads come from. And I won't go through the whole thing, but basically, Nadar, the Nadar, they're a subset of persons, spirits. Um, oh yes, so their deity created the earth and then fell asleep and then woke up and the earth was filled with all of these living beings, and then saw that the living beings were kind of destroying the earth, not kind of, were destroying the earth and her creation, and she got pissed off and created the dryads, the Hirokin, and the Proxume to protect and guard her creation, basically. So a really cool thing to think of for the Fae and Fae adjacent species is as protectors of the land. In paganism, that's very accurate, that those species, those folks, whatever they are, spirits, are there to protect the land. In Irish culture, it's very much, they're there to protect their land and also their own interests, which are kind of beyond our understanding. But yes, so think about your creation myth, our creation myth, and let's keep talking about it and figure out what we want to do. Or if no one wants to talk to me about it, then I'm just going to pick one and do it. Because I love lore and I think it's great. And then we'll jump off from there and we'll start creating our own lore. We can create our subspecies lore. And like I said, if y'all aren't into doing it and you're okay with me just doing it, like I will just, I'll go ham. I will do it. If you need help creating your personal lore, always hit me up. I am so happy to help and so excited to help and to make this happen. The lore night that they did at this event was very cool. It's something that I know the goblins do kind of on their own at events, but I believe that they're trying to make that more of a thing like the Bardic Night, where people can come and present their lore. So I want to make that a possibility and a reality for other species besides monsters, because I love monsters. I love their lore. It's super cool. But I'm not a monster person. It's just not what I'm into. And I want us to be able to have other rich lore in other species so that we can build this whole community even greater. So things that we can think about and include in our lore are the creation stories, like I talked about. Think about your deities or lack thereof. Maybe you're the deities. Think about your story, who you are, how you fit into the Belegarth world, or how you fit into the mundane world, and present that mundane world lore and just kind of say, hey, I was there for this. That's a possibility, as your persona. Think about a really common and recognizable thing for Fae and Fae adjacent folks is charms, either to protect against or to like invoke, or us to protect against others. So something like iron is really a common one. Using iron to protect against the other crowd in Ireland is a big thing, and also in other cultures, think about, or like garlic protecting against vampires. Think about those kinds of things, and include them in your lore, and include them in the way you present your lore. So one thing we were talking about with Antoinette the other day is like, if I go to a feast, I'm not going to have metal feast gear because iron, and I'm a Fae. I'm, yeah. Think about the things that happen at events or whatever, and find a way to incorporate those into your lore. So, or even if you go to a local practice and something crazy or awesome happens and you want to eulogize it into lore, like, do it. Include it on your Geddon page, or on your subspecies Geddon page, or on your realm Geddon page. If you don't have one, make one, or hit me up and I'll help. Think about actual things that happen and then work on including them into your lore. It's a really cool thing that the monsters have done, to, make things that have happened actually happened at events or whatever, and turn them into legend. And then, as I've talked about a lot, consider the mundane lore. Stick to the original mundane lore as much as, if you're going to include mundane lore in your lore, include it in its entirety, in its original form, and tell it that way, as a real thing and as it is. Does that make sense? Ta-da. So I did include some resources here. There's our Fae Geddon page. There's the Casting of Stones. There's the story of Malashikad. This Lervon.blogspot is a blog from Morgan Daimler, who is a priest of the Ace. Anyways, they are a priest of the other crowd. But they also share a lot of really good lore, and they do original translations of mostly Irish lore. They talk a lot about not just Irish and Scottish lore, but also Northern European lore. So really awesome resource to check out for appreciation of other crowd lore. And then this Facebook link is for our Fae and Fairy Folk of Dag Facebook group. Come check it out if you are not on that page and you want to be included. It's not a super happening page, but it is a place. I've been talking about this class a lot on there, and it is a place where we use to discuss our lore now and again. So come check out that page. Oh my goodness, this presentation took so much longer than I intended, but are there any questions?
No, thank you for all the information, though.
Yay. I am so happy to share it. I hope if you're watching this recording after the fact, find me on Facebook, Anya SilverSun. You can find me on Discord. I don't remember what my Discord name is, but
it's Anya with the accent over the A.
You can find me, Anya, on the Chaos Discord page. You can come to me in the after class meeting if you're watching this when the event's still happening. Yeah, come chat with me. Come find me. Come find me at events. I might have a bird on my face. I probably will. I'm trying to do this more. Bird, raven, face. Part of my lore. Raven. Ravens. Birds everywhere. Birds aren't real. Anyways, thank you all so much. This was a great time, and I'm really excited to make this conversation happen. And or if it's not a conversation, I'm really excited to just take the reins and run with it. So come at me or don't, and I'm just gonna do it.